Yeah, same here.
But all right, dude, take me back to the day because I named this episode "Walking Up on a Legend." Um, just run through the hunt real quick with everybody in case they haven't heard the story. And
Well,
I've seen you at some trade shows, so I bet you're tired of telling this story. But
I know
you got to tell Pat.
I never know where to start it. So I usually start it like I told you, I travel back and forth from Nashville. So I was coming home and I was going to stay home for, a good 10 days or so and deer hunt that. I always come home that last weekend of October and hunt that first week of November. And so I was on that Thursday. So I got home that Friday. My nephew killed a deer on Halloween, which was that Sunday. And so fast forward 4 days later is when I killed moose. So I was hunting that whole week and I was just trying to kill something bigger than my 134. And moose, he was the first shooter I seen that whole week. And so that day, Thursday, so that morning I hunted till about noon and I was about 400 yards from where I killed him that later on that evening. Well, that morning I seen probably 8 to 10 deer. I mean, it was a good morning and I was actually going to let that stand go that evening. That's why I took my climber that evening because I was going to go back to that stand that morning because I'm like, I'm just going to, I had a really good morning. I'm going to leave it go this evening, then get back in the morning. So anyways, I get home, have lunch, get back in the stand. I take my climber, get back to the woods around 3:30. And I didn't know where I was going to go. Let me shut that off. And I didn't know where I was going to go. I took my climber with me and, I went back to the west side of the farm, old four-wheeler trail I used to maintain when I was in high school. I always, cleared it out, and that's where I rode my quad at. And so I dropped down. I mean, there's logs all over now, brush growing up. So I dropped down, crossed the creek, and I was looking up on this oak flat, and I'm like, there's a pretty good drainage ditch that comes off of it and comes into this creek. And so I just go up there, start looking around, and just picked a tree, climbed up, sawed off 2 limbs on the way up. And this is 3:30, and right when I get up there, it was a pretty warm. It was probably 50, 55 degrees. I was just in a sweatshirt and real sunny day. And I just remember sitting there the whole time, sitting there for 3 hours. I never seen a deer. And I kept saying, I got to be 100 yards closer to this. There's a cornfield a couple hundred yards to the west of me. And I was like, I got to be 100 yards close to that cornfield. I just, man, there's something about it. And that's 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30 rolls around. And, it's starting to get dark out. I got 15 minutes of daylight left. And I got, my wife, now girlfriend at the time, she's texting me, hey, you seeing any deer? And I remember my dad texting me. And he said, you seeing anything? And I pulled my phone out and read his text, and I was about to text him back and say, no deer. And that's when I made my last look around. And when I got to my south of me, there he was, about 70 yards in the creek. And so he had his head down. So when I first seen him, he had his head down, put his head up. And that's when I just go, oh my gosh, this deer 70 yards from me, biggest deer I've ever seen. I don't know how many points he's at this time. All I know is he's a monster.
Yeah.
He's kind of looking around and, I don't even know what to do. What's this deer going to do? And he comes straight up that drainage ditch. And I was guessing that, 40 yards or so range. And he's coming up on the west side of that ditch. And if he would have stayed to the east side, man, I got plenty of room. I would have let him pass and I would have been able to, let him go and shoot him after he crossed, another 40 yards. Well, he stays on that west side. And I mean, he's coming up. He's just left, right. He's not stopping, just at a pretty good pace. And I whistle at him. I'm like, it's the thickest part. Like I said, it's just briars and sapling trees back there. And so I whistle and he stops, and I'm having a staring contest with him for about, I don't know, 10 seconds goes by, and I'm about to be sick because I'm looking at this deer and I can't shoot him. I mean, I got stuff going everywhere. I mean, I could have, tried to get that liver, but I was not, going to take a chance on this deer. And so I was like, man, one more step. I'm talking to myself. Like I said, this is within 5 or 10 seconds of dropping this deer. And I let him take one more step, and I let out another light whistle, and he just perks up and he throws that other left shoulder up. And that's whenever I had about a foot, and I snuck it in, and he ran about 50, 60 yards, and I watched him fall. And I mean, it was crazy. It was just nuts, man. I mean, I don't even know how to explain like the feeling of that. Like, cause I knew I was on him. And when I heard it hit, you know, there's so much adrenaline going. Like I always tell people, like I blacked out, like it was crazy. And that's what it was, man. That 2-3 minutes, watched him fall. And right after, I called my wife, like I said, girlfriend at the time. And she was my first phone call, called dad. And I'm like, Pops, I just beat you by, you know, I was thinking 180-inch deer, and he had killed, you know, 160, 170 on it way, you know, 10 years, 15 years prior. And, but yeah, it was just crazy.
Come to find out you beat everyone.
Yeah, you know, and I'm thinking, man, I got the personal best on this farm ever, you know, on this hog farm. We've been hunting it since I was a little kid. You know, I was fired up, like, man, I got bragging rights all over the county, you know.
Yeah.
Had no idea.
When did it, like, even when you walked up to the thing, did you have any inkling in your mind that it was what it was?
No, had no idea, man. I mean, it was me, property owner, my dad, my brother-in-law, property owner's boys. I mean, we were just all like, right when we got up to it, we're just like, man, you know, this is a big deer. And I'm like, man, you know, and we start throwing numbers like, man, 175. I said, my top, I was like 185. I mean, this deer has to be pushing 185. And then Troy, the property owner, he's like, now, Dust, I'd say he's high 160s.
Oh, did he say that really?
There, dude. And I was just like, I think he's a little bigger than that, Troy. But like, dude, we're not antler hunters, you know. We've always been guys that just, if it's 15 inches plus, I mean, we're pulling the trigger on it. So to us, I mean, a 160 is just like, we'd never seen that on hoof, really. I mean, other than the deer my dad killed when I was a freshman. But yeah, it's just, high 160s. I'll never forget that.
I like, not to bring this guy's defense or anything, but like, that buck is so massive, it almost doesn't do like the rest of how big the rack actually is justice, because it's so massive. Yeah, and it has a giant frame also, but the mass on it almost shrinks it up a little bit in like your mind.
Yes, like
so
if
I
it
can
had
kind of see how you think it would maybe not be a 200-incher, but
oh yeah, like I would have never even, if somebody would have told me right there, like that's, I would have been like, nah, like there's no, you know, like it's just, I didn't think it was possible. I still can't even really wrap my head around it, but it's just, we were thinking 185-inch deer.
Yeah. The thing about, because I was looking at, I've seen it a couple times now, and it's insane that the base, I mean, it just mass all the way out to and then the G3 too. We noticed how just massive the G3 was on the deer.
Yeah, he just carries that circumference. I mean, that mass. I mean, I think on his G2s, G3s, he's got 4.5 inches of just mass alone on.
Yeah,
you know, it's like that's a main beam on a lot of deer. It's crazy.
It's insane.
Yep.
No, it's probably the most beautiful looking deer I've ever seen. Like just the most perfect big just big deer ever.
Yep.
I mean, in the U.S.